Hello and welcome to Democracy Today. I am Osaitin Yari. Glad to be with you again. Last Thursday, news broke out of yet another abduction of school children from a school in Kebbi State. Reports say the attack by gunmen who have been alleged to be bandits seeking ransom is the third mass abduction within the last 3 weeks in northwest Nigeria. Reports vary, but at least 80 pupils and 5 teachers were kidnapped from the Federal Government College in the remote town of Bininyari. Before the attackers proceeded to ransack the hostel, at least one police officer was killed and another student shot during the ordeal. Yet to be confirmed reports indicate that some of the children may have regained their freedom following rescue efforts by security agencies, notably the military and police force. While we wait for verification through official channels, the latest high-profile attacks brings to the fore the grim development of unabated abductions, further complicating the security challenges of the nation. The idea that school children are having their lives disrupted, subjected to trauma, and truncating for many educational pursuits capable of transforming their lives has left many Nigerians worried. Heavily armed criminal gangs who the government say are members of the Boko Haram sect who have spread inland following the military action in the northeast have long targeted central and northwestern states, raiding villages, causing mayhem and kidnapping for ransom. The attraction to school children is the fact that they are soft targets. Once hauled successfully into the forest hideouts, payment negotiations then follow. The recent case involving students of the Greenfield University in Kaduna State took it to a worrisome dimension when some of the abductees were killed to compel the parents to pay the negotiated sum. It emerged later from the account of some parents that they paid 180 million naira along with 10 motorbikes. While there is no official government position on this matter, especially after the fact that the federal and state governments have cautioned against paying ransoms, many Nigerians are rightly agitated over these sad occurrences. But the challenge is broadened by the fact that it is not only schools that have been subject of attacks, but several federal highways as well as towns and cities have seen disturbing increase in kidnap activities. Frequent acts of violent crime, including militancy, insurgency, and banditry, have grown to form a major threat to Nigeria's national security. Banditry has come to encompass cattle rustling, armed robbery, and kidnapping for ransom. Abductions have become the most virulent, pervasive, and intractable violent crime in the country. A chronology of kidnapping incidents in Nigeria has shown the expansion in the location and pool of potential targets, regardless of victims' social class or economic status, marking a departure from the targeted kidnapping of wealthy Nigerians and foreign nationals. What is evident is that abductions have become more indiscriminate across Nigeria as criminal gangs view victims as a source of income. The perpetrators are gangs who appear to be taking advantage of inadequate policing and proliferation of firearms. Nigeria has one of the world's highest rates of kidnap for ransom cases. Other countries high up on the list include Mexico, Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, amongst others. The threat of kidnapping in Nigeria remains a serious concern. The trend across states have created a climate of fear and insecurity that undermines sustainable national development. The security challenge continues to have a cascading effect on public safety, food security, and social cohesion in the country. I now join security experts to help us chart a course out of this crisis. And let me introduce to you, joining us via the virtual networks, Francis Meribe is a security and management consultant, as well as a retired chief security intelligence officer of the DSS. Also, we'll be joining the conversation tonight is Onai Komu, is chairman Trans World Security Systems and president Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operators of Nigeria. And completing our number tonight is Murtala Abdullahi, is a climate and security researcher at Human Angle. Welcome, gentlemen. All right,
Thank
thank you
you
very
very
much.
much. Thank you, Yari. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's begin with my colleague now, Murtala, who's covering and reporting on these issues as well. Murtala, recall that a few months ago, a presidential spokesman said, to the effect that the media was hyping the security challenges. Now, can we start by deconstructing that argument? Does this development from Kebbi State and all others, not clearly show that we have a problem on our hands?
Well, actually, I think if there's any word that describes this current situation, should be that we have really lost control. Uh, Human security has gotten really, really bad, and it's unfair to say the media is hyping it. The media is only doing its best to provide transparency and to hold public office holders accountable. Uh, Human security is at the core of the mandate which public office holders have. And really, if they are unable to meet up to that mandate, it's the job of the media to highlight it and to hold them accountable. It's the only way, really. And with what we are seeing across Nigeria, especially in the northwest, uh, we can really say Nigeria has failed. These young students, they have become targets for kidnapping, for ransom. And the incident in KB recently really shows how the situation keeps deteriorating. Little progress has been made. This You can imagine that this situation is happening years after the Chibok girls, years after the Safe School initiative. And what really the KB incident has shown us is that our understanding of safe schools need to change. This was a school that had security asset on ground, but it was still targeted, which means that the assumption that having more guns in school will protect schools is a flawed one.
All right, Murtala, are you done? Okay, let me ask you
Yeah.
this next question, and that is to explain to us what is at the heart of this epidemic, if you allow me call it so.
Yeah, actually, I think it's really a big epidemic. It's a virus that we need to treat both in terms of its symptoms, its underlying stressors. I think really Nigeria as a country needs to ask the right questions. Our policymakers need to bring out a coherent national strategy. State governors cannot be doing different things and the FG be doing a different thing. There needs to be a clear-cut national security policy for the Northwest, how to address the problem and the other sub-component. Now, the kidnapping for ransom is a sub-component of the problem. You have the headed farmers violence, you have the banditry, you have the vigilante crisis. So there are so many sub element of it, and you also have, in terms of the kidnapping, it has different dimensions. You have kidnapping between members of other communities, you have kidnapping on highways, and you also have the school kidnapping. So everything needs to happen in terms of a holistic approach. That's the only way we can make progress. One, go after the criminals, ensure that it's sufficient deterrent. Once they can continue to target the schools, it will continue. But once there's deterrence, once there's a repercussion, so if you engage, until date, there's no single evidence to show that individuals who have perpetrated kidnapping have been arrested and prosecuted. So this encourage others to engage in these activities. Secondly, why are we not having an efficient intelligence gathering system to disrupt this kind of kidnappings from happening? This is very important. So we need deterrence. We need prosecution of offenders and people who are engaged in this act. Is one of the most important ways to stop it from keep happening. Thirdly, we need to also address the conflict that is ongoing in the Northwest. We need to stop simplifying it to either gold mining and other things. We need to understand that this is a conflict that is multidimensional and requires a multi-layered approach to solve it, from efficient border security, efficient law enforcement, addressing social grievances, providing development and economic incentive for people to have livelihood, stopping the flow of arms and drugs. So all these things needs to be addressed, even though we want to address the kidnapping itself.
All right, thank you, Murtala. You have given us quite number of solutions, and yes, so we are still diagnosing the problems, and we'll talk about the solutions further as we go. Now let's turn the conversation over now to Mr. Meribe, because one point you made there now was intelligence gathering, and so I'd like to ask him, because as a former DSS operative, he's part of the intelligence community, and I'd like to believe that Mr. Meribe still has his contact, and so he would help us. Mr. Meribe, you help us understand what is at the heart of the repeated failings that we see or that is occurring by the intelligence community. Why can we say that our intelligence officials are not performing their duties, optimally or effectively? Yeah, do you agree with me, sir?
Okay, Mr. Yari, what I do here is that I do not agree with you totally that the intelligence forces are unable to find out what is going on. But one of the things we know for sure is that the political will to act on intelligence that is available is lacking in the country to it. As we speak, many of the security agencies have information of what is going on in the country. Some of them report this information from experience. I know that it is not everything that is reported that is acted upon because of interests. Now, the other angle is that the intelligence forces themselves also need to do more. Personally, I believe that as we have increased in the situation that we have in the country today, the way it is, then this is the time for everyone involved in that department to up their game. I do not feel, from what I get, from what that is going on, that the intelligence forces are upping their game. They are moving to the stage where the issues are. It seems to me they are still operating in the former systems. It seems to me there's a lot of political weight in what they do. They are not using professional systems. There's what we know very much when it comes to intelligence gathering is that you are objective in such a way that even if your findings is something that impugns on the integrity of your boss, you still report it. It does not matter the fact that this person is your boss, this person is the president, this person is a highly placed minister in government, but the fact that your findings are what they are, security intelligence operatives of personnel are supposed to bring them out the way they are. Now, one of the only angle to which I can say there's a chance that, as we did it in the past, that the security agencies are still doing well when it comes to intelligence, is that it is not everything you report that the political powers that be allowed to manifest. Because some of these security situations we are seeing have political undertone. They have political undertone that makes it difficult for everything to be left for where it is, which is we have information of what is going to happen, and then these are probable actions, because intelligence must provide solutions. When you discover a situation, you must provide a solution to that situation. But there are times when, despite the information available, despite the suggestion that have been made that can nip the challenges in the bud, but the political will to execute these things because of interests do not allow them to happen.
All right.
Right now, I need to say the security forces, the intelligence forces need to up their game.
All right,
I
Mr.
do not
Meribe.
think their game is where they should operate.
All right, Mr. Meribe, I'll follow up with you, especially on the issue you raised here of political undertone, and we'll see how that plays out in this situation we have, because I have a question for you on that. But why I want to go back to the issue of the intelligence community in terms of nipping issues in the bud, like the way what Murtala said to us moments ago. The point is that report after reports from witnesses have said the individuals who perpetrate this crime come in mass, with motorbikes, with vehicles where possible, and then move children in their numbers. For example, the last one in Kebbi, we are talking of 80. We have spoken in this country of 300, and they move people in these numbers. They operate for hours at a time. And how do you respond to the fact that the intelligence community has no answer to the fact that they cannot nip this in the bud by seeing this ahead and then dealing with it when it's happening real time?
This you can call this a conspiracy theory or a form of theory. This is the reason why I say that their intelligence is available most of the time, but political will to act on them because of interest do not happen. Because, for example, I have a brother who works in logistics. So when he heard about the 300 students in Castina State, we discussed it and he said, hey, the logistics to move from him to move 50 people from one place to another, either for conferences or other issues, is so huge, and that they do not do a kilometer without meeting policemen, soldiers on checkpoints. And his question is, how is it possible for people to go and head in 300 students and take them away from their school and then take them for weeks before the ransom is paid and they are released? So this is where the theory of political interest is on. And to me, like you mentioned, it is surprising that these kind of operations will be carried out without intelligence forces knowing it. So it's either they are reporting it and nobody is acting on them, or then they need to close shop. Because if those things can pass without their knowing them in advance, then, I mean, what is it that they are here for? In your analysis today, you mentioned the fact that coming from Chibok girls, we have had several other kidnappings of school children, and these are going in hundreds, and it looks like a pattern. And for it to happen again of recent, like the Kebbi state-owned, then there's no how that those in power in this country, there's no how the intelligence forces will not be upon the trail of these people and know. And if they don't know, they need to close shop. If they know, then it is that issue, this theory of possible political interest, not allowing these issues to be dealt with for what they are. That is my position on it.
All right, Mr. Mabry, thank you. Let's bring in Mr. Ekomo as well now so that we can get his perspectives. And we'll also take up with him the issues you have thrown up here. But let's quickly turn over to him to ask him the fact that, you know, in the case, what we see today now, and which you have rightly alluded to, is the fact that, you know, it's no longer a matter of if, it's usually a matter of when and really what new location. We almost can expect that with clockwork, this will happen again and things will continue that way. So I'd like to ask you, Mr. Ekomo, are we operating and applying the right amount of vigilance, surveillance, and tactical response that is necessary for situations like this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayari, for having me on. I think the short answer to that question is no. We are not applying enough, vigilance, surveillance, or even tactical operations. If we are applying them, then it wouldn't be happening in the first place. Because what you are saying, let's start with vigilance. Who is looking out? Who is watching? Who is looking at bad guys? Now, the intelligence agencies are supposed to be doing all that sniffing and detecting threats ahead of their becoming lost. They are not. These kids are grabbed, they are seized and taken away, and parents pay, like in the case of Greenfield University, 180 million naira in ransom cash, despite all the protections from the Kaduna government that they shouldn't pay. I mean, what is the option? What option do the parents have? You said they shouldn't pay ransom, yet you are unable to release them. You are even unable to defend them in the first place. You know, I mean, this is a gross negligence on the part of government, both state and federal. I mean, this is gross irresponsibility on the part of the governments also. So I don't understand this. Okay, so let's start with that. Surveillance. You are not able to detect the threats, as it were, detect the bad guys, preempt them, stop them proactively from seizing these kids from schools. Now, you said surveillance. Is that surveillance? Yes. Surveillance. Are you able to follow them even when they seize these kids and they are taking them away? Are you able to follow them? Now, we've seen something here in terms of what happened at FGC Kebbi, that's Federal Government College Kebbi. That's Benin Yauri in Kebbi, where because of involvement or because of help from citizens who were calling the authorities and providing direction of flight of the bad guys. The air assets were able to interdict them, and there was that gun battle where 7 people were rescued, 1 killed or died. Some reports say the person was killed, others say the person died of exhaustion. A school kid died, and then some of the bad guys were neutralized. But lo and behold, we still have about roughly 70 persons in custody right now, even as we speak. So surveillance is not there. It's a failure in surveillance. Now, what of tactical operations? Well, take the case of Kankara in December last year. The authorities said, "Oh, we know where they are, but we couldn't engage." Well, in the end, they paid ransom and released them. And this is the story we keep hearing. So that also tells you that tactically, that tactical now means projectile encounter. That is shooting war, actually engaging, like what they did in the case of Brenning Kirby. Now they engaged them in a shootout, but they got away, as it were. So I think we have serious issues to ponder here in terms of our ability to prevent kidnaps or prevent these school invasions and these mass abductions that have become, like you said, it's no longer whether it's going to happen, it's just which day. So that from security, we call it frequency of attacks, frequency of occurrence. It's become so frequent that it's almost predictable. I was teaching a class this morning in my school, and I said to my students, I said, no longer a question of whether you have a school, it's when you are going to be attacked, because your name is going to become Tegina, like the Islamia school, or it's going to become Kankara, like the boys who were seized there, or it's going to become Kagara, like the girls who were seized there, or it's going to become Greenfield, the people who were seized, 23 seized, 5 killed, and 18 returned after 180 million killed. Now, or it's going to become even more recently, Nuhu Mabali Polytechnic in Zaria, where they have seized some kids, or Dapchi, or whatever, Chibok. I mean, the names are unending. Right. So your name is going to be one of those if you don't take action to protect your kids from being seized by these bastard bandits.
All right, Mr. Kobo, let's take this further with you before we return to Murtala here, because Mr. Meribe, who's an intelligence specialist, you know, he threw up something that I found interesting. He threw up political undertones might be playing some games or taking place, and that this was part of what we are seeing playing out. So I'd like to ask you the question from using that with the background that the president, in a recent interview, threw the ball or threw it back to the state governors and as well as traditional institutions to say you are not doing enough to protect the people that are within your constituencies. And therefore, the question will be, was that correct? Because is that the framework because we currently practice in Nigeria today? Does it enable for those levels of governance to be the ones taking charge in this case?
Thank you, Mr. Yari. I appreciate it. The president was very correct. The president was spot on. I loved what the president said. Now, listen, you just reason with me a second, sir. We know that the federal resources are so thin and so spread out. JTF operations in 35 states of the country. Police agency of 300,000 only, half of them doing boy duties. Military resources total, Army, Navy, Air Force, 150,000. So how many guys do you have there? And is this same military resources that you are using to run JTF, do Operation Hadinkai, do Operation Hadarindaji, do all the operations you have, well stroke, Akpatume. You know, these are all the operations you have running all over the country. You know, where are the resources? Our military is undermanned severely for a war footing like we have right now in this country. We're supposed to have like a 500,000 man military and a 1 million man police agency, but we don't. Look at, we're trying to recruit 10,000 policemen for the past 3-4 years. It hasn't happened. We are still thinking about it, and Police Service Commission is suing IG. IG is suing Police Service Commission. because they can't agree on who is going to recruit 10,000 lousy policemen. I mean, it's so crazy. It doesn't make any sense. We don't seem to care about the security of this country at all, really. But anyway, having said that, federal resources are very thin. That's what I'm trying to say. So the president is right to push it back to the state chief executives and say, listen, guys, you have security vote. What are you doing with it? You can't just sit there like pregnant women and complain. I have nothing against pregnant women. They are good people. But you can't just sit there and complain that, we can't do anything. Oh, we don't have security on exclusive list. Who told you that? Even security is on a local government list, because the local government that licenses shotguns in this country today. That is current law, extant legislation. So what are we talking about? Go back to Cap 59, the Firearms Act, and see what it says. It's very clear. So what I'm trying to say here is these excuses are no longer tenable. People are being seized, lives are being lost, destinies are being destroyed, terminated, and these excuses are no longer available to local governments, to subnationals. So what has happened? The Western Nigeria Security Network was set up. Amotekun. Okay, now the eastern states have set up Ibubeagu. I'm waiting for South to set up their own network also. These are very important. Now, the North Central is a mixed bag. I don't know what is going to happen there, because they have a different kind of geography and language mix. They're going to have a problem in terms of setting up some kind of a network, but they should do something for self-preservation. Now, the Northeast is embroiled in a shooting war with with Boko Haram. So they have a different problem. Then Northwest, they have said they are not interested in setting up any outfit. That's okay. One day, the citizens are going to really get very upset with them, and they will find the solution to their problem. So having said that, I think aside that's at the regional levels, and then at the state levels, we ought to do something down to even senatorial districts. There ought to be security arrangements, and then community level. Even this week I issued a press release on this. I called it an outward-facing security architecture, and that is where we ought to be. We ought to look at how to build this thing from ground up. Everybody keeps looking at federal resources, which are no longer there. Once upon a time, Nigeria used to be very peaceful and safe, and those federal resources could scare people. But look at these guys, the guys at FGC, Birnin Yauri. They went to a facility. There were 21 armed policemen. They took them on and prevailed and sacked the policemen and took as many kills as they wanted to take. Now that tells you that we have a state of insurgency playing out in the Northwest, but we want to deny everything, and denial is not going to make any difference. We can stay and deny it. Eventually it will blow up in our faces, and we have to do something about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ikomo. We'll continue to interrogate some of these issues you have raised, but because we want to make this a two-part conversation, first with the schools, and then we'll go on to the general situation across the country. But I think the final question on this leg of our conversation should go to Murtala then to say, look, you mentioned when you were speaking earlier, the Safe School Initiative, which was begun some years ago. We understand, of course, that it was collapsed into the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management. And you heard some of what Mr. Ikomo has said, and it is clear very much so. I think you also alluded to it too, that we must evolve in national response. So please tell us what this response should entail.
I think one of the first things that we need to see change is accountability. Kids get kidnapped, get abducted, and no one is held accountable. No one loses his job. No one apologizes for his negligence or failure. I like what Mr. Francis said. The intelligence system works to a certain extent. The intelligence report that are sent. But when people fail to follow up on intelligence and something happened, then that individual who has failed to take that responsibility or to follow up with an action should be held accountable. You don't hear anyone get sacked either at the local level. There are security systems in place in that local level, some at the local government level, some at the state level. Someone needs to take the fall. And that way, the next person tries to prevent such situation from happening. Secondly, we have not seen the government try to put in place mechanisms to evaluate what led to adoption, what are the mistakes that happened, and also announce a set of new procedures to checkmate the lapses that has led to reoccurring kidnapping. This has not happened, so which means that the security architecture has not been overhauled to ensure that our security forces have the capacity and the capability to prevent it from happening, or have the capacity to disrupt it when it's happening, or to engage in adequate surveillance when these incidents happen, and also conduct safe rescue operations. And in peradventure they are unable to rescue kids that have been adopted, that they have the capacity to follow up and arrest individuals that have been involved with this. The earlier speaker spoke about the need and lack of capacity in terms of the police, how the police is undermanned. I think we have a huge problem around the quality or the quantity of police force. I think this is one of we need to decide: do we need more police officers, or do we need to provide adequate training and with training and also equipments for the current police officers? So in terms of the military, we are stretching the military team, and then the resources available for the military is also limited. And this is in terms of the broader national crisis that we have in terms of dwindling resources. But what we should do really is to try to improve efficiency and effectiveness of our security forces. And so when you have a highly trained, highly motivated, highly skilled security force, they're able to do their job better. And lastly, really, generally, the security architecture of Nigeria needs a lot of change. There needs to be a decentralized system. State command, either in terms of the intelligence services, the police, or the military, should be able to have more powers to take certain action. You don't need to get orders from Abuja. So, for instance, there's a signal, there's an intelligence that something is about to happen. You don't need to relay back to Abuja before you take action. You're supposed to be able to take action immediately, and if you fail to take action, the system should be able to hold you accountable. But when you have to wait for orders from Abuja, it means that the system cannot hold you accountable, and then how do you expect Abuja to hold Abuja accountable? That's not going to happen. So we need to really decentralize the powers that we have. There was also a conversation about state governors. I agree, state governors have to do a lot. We have seen some states set up trust funds where they have provided police with additional capabilities. I think that should be the path that we take, not setting up vigilantes.
All right.
Vigilantes actually end up making the situation worse. Even the Northwest, this is evident in the area where the Yansake also helped in making the situation bad. So, but state governors should be able to support security forces with the right kind of equipment and capacity that they need to solve the peculiar challenges that they have.
All right, so we will be talking more on decentralization of our security architecture after this short break. So don't go anywhere, gentlemen, and as well as our viewers. Democracy Today returns.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for remaining with us as we took that very brief break. All right, yeah, so please let me ask you quickly before we go ahead, So in your neck of the woods, that's Lagos I speak of, there once reigned a man who is currently undergoing trial. He goes by the name Evans, very fearsome kidnapper who had raked in hundreds of millions of ransom and, and ran a successful operation for many years. It shocked a lot of Nigerians when it came out in the news. And so we are trying to understand from you, because now we are going beyond the schools, as we said, but to the general situation across the country, because people have said this is an epidemic that we have on our hands. And we are trying to understand what factors, are really propelling other humans, to put their fellow citizens, to put the life of others in terms of in danger, to put those lives, prosper from another person's agony, if you allow me put it that way. So what are the push and pull factors that are motivating individuals to join this line of work, if we also call it that?
Thank you very much. And it's a very despicable line of work, if I may add that. Now, push and pull factors. I think the primary push factor is it's a low risk, high yield event. You kidnap somebody. It doesn't take a lot to kidnap someone. Even if you wrap a biro with cloth and point it at someone, he will think it's a gun. You say, enter this car, they will enter. And then you start calling their relations and tell them if you call the police, we'll kill the person, and all that nonsense that they do. So what it is so easy to carry out this crime. It used to be that people used to form gangs to go and rob banks, and they engage in shootout with bank guards and all kinds of things. And sometimes they leave the bank without getting a kobo. But now, when you kidnap somebody, you are sure of getting some cash. So so I think primarily because it's so easy to do and it's lucrative a trade. That is why it's becoming, like you said, a line of business. Now, of course, there are aggravating factors: unemployment, lack of adequate law enforcement. I think Mr. Muritala said something about this a moment ago. Impunity. People do it and get free with it. They enjoy their cash and move on. Like you said about Mr. Evans, he has been plying this trade for so many years and he wasn't caught until very recently. And well, thank God he's paying the price now. And so on and so forth. So there are so many things driving it. But I think one of the main things we need to consider here is the fact that I want to perhaps go to the area of what Mr. Meribe spoke about, that the intelligence, the work of intelligence, I think is not well understood in this country. We don't understand that really, that the work of intelligence officials is to find out, using their technical means, using their human means and all other means, open sources, whatever, to sniff out information about incidents that are about to occur, and then be able to interrupt them using perhaps the police agency or using their own tactical teams. So I think there isn't that understanding very well. Now, intelligence resides not only in DSS, it also resides in the police agency. They have an intelligence bureau. It's called CIB. You have intelligence in other agencies also. In civil defense, they have their intelligence, and so on and so forth. Even the military, they have intelligence for in the army, in the navy, in the air force. And some of these agencies, and some of the even their training schools are very good. I just inspected one recently within the military, and they are superb. In fact, the civilian intelligence agency should go and learn from these guys because they are really that good. But having said that, just to say that why is kidnapping, and it's all over the country, not only in the Northwest or in the North Central or in the Northeast, kidnapping has become a big business in Nigeria because by and large, people have gotten away with it. We've not been able to get the capability to detect the perpetrators of these crimes. So one indication I wrote about in a book I published 2014, captioned "Kidnap," and I said that at a kidnap crime scene, we don't have the capability to even collect forensic evidence such that we can use that hard evidence to detect the perpetrators of the crime and then put them away, punish them. So, and then there are so many problems in the system, particularly with policing and criminal investigation in this country. So, I mean, it's so large a problem. It's not something I can discuss in this couple minutes that I have, but suffice to say that impunity is a big driving factor for the growth of kidnap industry in the country, and the fact that it is so lucrative, people are doing it. Now, just 1 second. You have a variant, which is the most scary one, which is the one of the headsmen who jump out of the bush, open fire on oncoming vehicles, and seize the occupants of the vehicles. That is the one you have all over the country. You have it in Edo State. You have it in Delta State. You have it everywhere. You have it in the Southwest. You have it everywhere. Look at those 4 Chinese rail workers who were kidnapped a couple days ago. That is that variant. They come out, they attack you on the job site, seize you, and then kill the police personnel, unfortunately, may so rest in peace, and take away those people so that they can start calling for nairas. So it's a foul crime. It's something that we really ought to pay attention to, because it has to be discouraged. I think somebody was talking about deterrence, Mr. Muritala.
Yeah.
You need to deter these guys. You need to punish them severely. First, you need to detect them. You need to prosecute and punish them very severely, so that others will say, you know what, it's not worth it. And that's the only way to solve this kind of a problem.
All right, Mr. Miripe, let's come to you now. Let's talk more on solutions, because Mr. Ekomo has already started us on that part. So let's begin to talk solutions. And he made clear to us, evidently, which is already common knowledge. You know, for example, kidnapping took a life of his own in South. You remember, in the years of the militancy in that region, spread to the northeast. And clearly, we have established on this program that we have an epidemic on our hands. So let's continue here, therefore, with solutions. What are the urgent steps that must be taken to get us out of this?
One of the things I would suggest right away and offhand is the devolution of our security apparatus. Moritala mentioned it today, and Mr. Ekomo also mentioned it. The federal system, the concentration of security in the hand of the federal government is not working, and it will not work. So we need to, if we need a law to do that, that law needs to come up quickly, where the states and local government and even communities are constitutionally allowed to set up their own security operations with everything they need to be able to detect and neutralize these criminal forces. Some time ago, there was a lot of discussion in this country about community policing, and that is an avenue we need to pursue. We need to pursue that avenue in such a way that and not put it in the same bureaucratic thing we do in Nigeria here, where as soon as you plan a nice thing, set up committees, and then they die in the pipe. But this is something, it's an emergency we have on our hands. It's an epidemic, as Mr. Elmo said, and it needs to be nipped in the bud. I mean, the fight needs to start frontally, and the only way we can deal with that is that state governments, local governments, and communities have adequate constitutional backing and power to deal with security situations in their localities. That is one thing I will say immediately. Then the next one is, Mr. Mutala mentioned that today. Nobody's taking responsibility for anything. And I do not understand how the Chief of Army Staff, the Inspector General of Police, the Commissioners of Police, and all the leaders, even the DSS directors, both the Director General and State Directors, and every security agency involved in these activities will sit by. These monumental criminal activities will happen, and then nobody resigns, nobody is dismissed, and everybody simply sits there. That is totally unacceptable. In advanced crimes, you yourself, on your own, as soon as you see that these terrible mistakes have been made, they resign. That's what we see happening in other places where that are developing better than us. People resign when they know they have failed. In this country, if they fail, I don't know what they do. They keep them there. Nobody terminates them, and then they say, do not have a conscience to live. We need to begin to feel responsibility for the roles that are given to us, and to know that these are given by public as a public trust. And when that trust is lost, we need to really pack our bags and leave. That is the second solution I will suggest. And the third thing I will say is the intelligence operations of government need to be a place that will receive so much power, you know, to be able to go into details and do whatever they must do. I cannot forget in a hurry when kidnapping was too bad in Abia State, in most of the southeast. That was around about 2005 up to 2010 or thereabout. In those days, they even kidnap people who sell akara on the road. Now, to deal with this matter, agencies went underground. They did all kinds of things, set up all kinds of operations that enabled them find the sponsors, the people that do these things. And the day they were able to come, to do what they need to do. There was a snag, and this is where I feel that political interests are usually a huge problem here. The snag that happened was that these military operations that have been planned with a lot of intelligence on hand was coming up. And these people were not allowed to get into Abia State. They were said to have been asked to stay in Okigwe for days. And when that filtered into people, the ear of people like me, I said, by then I've left service. And I said, how can someone even know that this operation is going to hold? And it was found out that it is the political forces that were saying, oh, slow down. And they were trying to take care of those kidnappers who might be in their payroll. Now, they were able to come in, but before then, the main kingpins has escaped, but they were able to neutralize and reset a little bit the kidnap situation in the southeast. Now, look at the one happening in the north. Sheikh Abubakar, Sadiq Abubakar Gumi, have met several times with these bandits. He had taken pictures with them. State governors are taking pictures with them, with their guns and everything slung across their shoulder and their bodies. And if you can find where they are, why can't the security forces find where they are? This is why I said political undertone at the earlier stage. And I believe that we need to deal with our political interests when we are dealing with security.
All right.
What I must warn the politicians is that it will get to a point that they themselves will not be safe. This is deduction. It is not, right. I have no part of it because, of course, I can't do crime. But this will get to the point where even those covering crime will become victims. It's getting to that point. All of us agree we have an epidemic on our hands right now.
All right, we hope it doesn't get to that point, really. We hope that we can take the steps that are necessary at this point in time. But we thank you for your contributions. Let's turn this over now to Murtala one more time again, and let's move in its solutions and in the direction of hostage negotiation and, crisis negotiation and all of these issues, because we have already touched on decentralizing the police. But really now, this is to say that you heard in the news before when the government came out to say, look, we could not launch an outright attack for fear of casualties. But we have seen that across the world, we have seen where these incidents have taken place, and we have seen the level of negotiations and management of hostages that ensures that the hostages are set free and the criminals are apprehended. What do we need to do in our own situation?
Well, it's quite really sad that years have gone by. We have still not built the capacity to conduct rescue operations, either in sort of small and large scale. In fact, Nigeria should by now be a country that can train other countries in terms of conducting large-scale rescue operations because of the nature of the kidnappings that have been happening in this country. We should in fact be the ones teaching people how to rescue situations where you have 200, 300 hostages, because it's more complex. But because this has happened several times, we should have built that capacity. But this has not happened. We don't learn from our mistakes, or we don't even care to document and really evaluate our mistakes. So to address this problem, everyone has spoken a lot about the solutions, but it goes back to our national security strategy and architecture itself. What exactly are we doing, and where do we want to go in terms of our human security apparatus and system? I earlier mentioned that kidnapping is a sub-element of a broader crisis, and there's no how you can address the kidnapping alone without addressing other factors. So if there are social grievances, unemployment, criminality, and so we go after the criminals, ensuring that they pay the full price for their actions. You need to also find ways to address these social and economic grievances within the scope of our national security strategy, or what is now referred to as human security, because it means addressing development, economic reasons. There was earlier mentioned the local government. Our local government are almost just like pictures. We need to ensure that they are strengthened, they are able to be part of the security system, they're able to address some of the social and economic grievances of the people. State governors need to be more viable. We need to really run governance in a manner that really meets the needs and yearning of the people. A lot of these places where these people operate are in the forest areas, ungoverned, unprotected areas. Why are they this way? We need to ensure that the state has eyes and ears in all corners of this country, and that the government has presence in all corners of this country. That's one of the ways to really address this problem that we have. If we are investing in technology, our investment in technology in terms of addressing crime should also be also addressing the underlying issues behind crime. And so, if we are buying these for surveillance in terms of detecting criminals, you should also use these to provide social services for communities that are in remote areas. So that way, if you invest today, in 15 years' time, you are able to avoid having another security incident. So for now, it's containment, but how do we prevent a long-term? And this is where this biggest problem we're having now is with education. Now, the more there are attacks on education facilities, the more we will have problem in the long run, because more people will not go to school. Concerning the fact that we already have a huge education deficit, we have under education, which means that a lot of our young people are not equipped for the future. The world is moving fast. The jobs that are available are moving fast. Some are becoming obsolete. We have a lot of young people who still practice agriculture in an obsolete manner with low yield, which means that they have low income and affects their living standard and makes them vulnerable to joining criminal groups. And now that we are really destroying our education system with these ways of kidnapping because we have failed to arrest, which means that in 10, 15 years' time, there will be a new problem for a new government. And that's why we need to address that problem now.
Right now,
fix
okay.
the education sector and also in terms of securities.
Okay, thank you very much, Murtala Abdullahi. We have enjoyed your contributions, but we have less than 5 minutes, and so let's quickly throw two questions, both Mr. Ikomu as well as to Mr. Emeribe. Let's start with Mr. Ikomu first. I would see if we can do our answers very, very short, one minute at most, to say, talk to us now about how we can therefore track in terms of ransom payments. In many of these cases, we know very much so that sums ranging from 100, 500 in the million naira are being paid out by the families of the abductees. And what should we begin to do in terms of following the money? Because I think that's one of the simplest ways, in my lay opinion, to nipping this in the bud. So you as the expert, please proceed in that line.
Thank you very much. Well, I think the first thing is there must be a partnership between the parents or the family members and the police agency. When there's a kidnap incident, the relations, the relatives of the victim should call in the police. And now, even when ransom demands are made, they should put the money together, and then they can put GPS equipment in there. There are things that can signal where the money is being taken physically back to some control center. It's very simple. It's available. It's in the market. It's cheap. Now, aside from that, you can have marked monies also in there, such that if those monies come up anywhere, they are used, then the authorities can go in and arrest those persons, because they will be deemed to be confederates of the kidnappers and be made to say where they got the monies. Now, the other thing is there could be some kind of surveillance, area surveillance with drone or whatever, that with homing devices that are placed in the bags, because these guys usually ask for a lot of money. They don't ask for small cash. They want big money. So you give them big money, and then you put in something in there, and they are usually very small, miniature. In fact, that intelligence school I said I visited recently, even as recently as last weekend here, they are building their own miniature bugs that can now serve as homing devices that will continue to send information about where those things, that's where the money is going. And the security forces can triangulate into that place, and then perhaps guys like the Air Force can do their thing, bomb out the bastards from there.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Eberibe. I just chuckled at the bomb out the, But let's come to you to close this up for us in terms of talking about plugging what we see is part of the drivers of this, the availability of small arms and light weapons, as well as the fact that we have ungoverned spaces, a lot of them in our country, and this poses the challenge because we now have that criminals find hiding spaces. Yeah.
Okay, I would like to state here that It's true that Nigeria is large, but if we are determined to deal with security issues we have on our hands, we can do it. For example, when these kidnappers pick people, the government, the security agencies, even anybody who is interested can find a way to follow where these people are. One of the key things that is destroying our system is lack of investigation. It seems for the Nigeria police and other agencies, investigation starts and stops as soon as you finish making a report, and that's it. But how can such huge sums of money, I have the Kankara boys, 800 million was paid, and these people came in large number to take 300 people. Nobody followed them after they took that money. Why didn't the investigation continue? How can we close a case of kidnap just because ransom has been paid and the people are released? We are not supposed to close it at that point. These forests are in Nigeria. There are technologies called drones. So if you are afraid of human presence in those places, putting security people in jeopardy, how about the drones? Continuing the search for these people. And they are usually locatable. They can be found. So my suggestion will be, even when this kidnap has happened, regardless of the size of our forests, we can keep a tab on these people continuously through drones, through surveillance. Mr. Homo mentioned it today, that this is a major angle of our security that has failed. Should this stop just because a ransom has been paid and a few people have been released? It did not take away the fact that a crime that needs to be punished has happened. So follow-up, investigation need to be something we need to move into. If we are investigating these forests, we will know where they are. We'll find where those people are. But investigation seems to have died in the security operations of Nigerian government.
All right. Well, we hope that that gets rejigged in shortest possible time. All right. The conversation around national security will definitely continue on this program, but that's how much we have time for on Democracy Today tonight. I'd like to thank my guests who have joined the conversation tonight. Francis Meribe, Security and Management Consultant. We also have Onai Komu, is the Chairman, Trans World Security Systems. Thank you for being part of it. We've also had Murtala Abdullahi, is a security researcher at Human Angle. I am Usaiti Yari. Thank you for being part of it tonight. We'll join you again at 10 p.m. on Sunday.